Hi, my name is Allie, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the maker behind Crochet in the Mud, where I do both crochet plushies as well as pottery. And this is going to be a part 2 video to my Memorial Day market. So I will link the vlog portion up above if you want to go check that out if you haven't seen it already. But this is going to be the sit down stories from the market, what all sold, and stuff like that. So this was a very rainy market. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Colorado weather, it typically doesn't rain that often. We are in, I think it's a semi-arid desert, like something like that. It of course was misting all day, every day of the market, except Monday. Started out pretty sunny and dry, and I was excited and thought that, I can at least put my tent away dry and everything's gonna have a chance to dry. And then of course right at the end it downpoured, and I mean downpour, and there was lightning in the area, and they made us all evacuate, and then they ended up just canceling the market early. So the weather was not on my side for this market. And as I'm filming this coming weekend is my Pride market. And so far the weather looks like it's in my favor. It's going to be sunny. However, it's going to be 90 degrees. So I think it'll be fun. People will still come out. And I do have fans for my booth just for this kind of weather. So while I was at the market, I was able to restock some plushies. I brought yarn to make more axolotls because of course those were selling out. I made some more possums while I was at the market, and I was able to restock some jellies. So if you include the plushies that I restocked at the market, I brought $6,347 of plushie inventory. Now I also have crochet kits, so I had $75 worth of crochet kit inventory, $15 of stitch marker inventory, $52 of resin eyes, and then herb strippers, which are my best selling pottery. I had $1,355, bringing that total to $7,844 of inventory, not counting other pottery. So I only kept track on my spreadsheet of herb strippers. So I also had like mugs and bowls and spoon rests, and I'm sure I brought other stuff. Yeah, real quickly, I'll throw up a video of my setup. I'll put up day 2 setup. So if you didn't watch the vlog, I was actually not there for day 1. So my partner Henry went and did the market for me on Saturday because I had to work my summer job. So it was definitely an interesting day. This was the first time I've not been at my market. You know, we've done things where like he'll cover the booth while I go walk around, or one of us will show up late or whatever, but I've never not gone for an entire day of a market. So yeah, that was interesting, and that's why I brought the stuff to make jellies, because he took 4, I think, on day 1 and sold them all. So I came in and just tried to crank those out. So he did Saturday by himself, I did Sunday by myself, and then Monday we did together. So I did write down 2 stories, not too much happening. Both of them involved the parent of the customer. So I had some adults come into my booth. They picked up the axolotls, and I overheard them say, "Oh, it's a dragon or a tadpole or something. Regardless, it's adorable." Which, it's pretty typical that adults don't know what the axolotls are, but a dragon or a tadpole is an interesting stretch. But that was just a funny quote that I wrote down. And then I also had a parent come back with their kid. So they had looked earlier, then they went and walked around and came back. And I heard the parent telling the kid, "All right, we're here. We agreed that you were going to have to make up your mind when we got here." And then the kid finally does, picks an item, and then the mom goes, "Oh, but what about this? Oh, but what about this?" And then obviously now the kid doesn't know what they want, but like, that's your fault. You told them to make up their mind, and then they did, and then you threw other options in the mix. And then lastly, I wrote down for this market, the $18 items were $19.62. So I guess the kid had $21 of cash and they handed it all to me, or they tried to at least. And then the mom took the one back. And then the kid was like, oh, I want to give her a tip, which is totally fine. Like, I don't expect a tip. But the mom was upset with their kid that they wanted to tip me. And then, you know, with the cash, it takes me a second to get your change out. And this lady, like, demanded her 30 cents back. Like, first of all, it's 30 cents. Secondly, I'm physically counting out your change right now. Like, take a breather. I will get you your change. I promise I'm not keeping your money and overcharging you. But that was just an interesting thing I noticed. So this market actually ended up being a loss for me. So, apologies about the lighting. Is that better? A little. So at this market, it is the most expensive I've ever paid for a booth fee. So my booth fee was $988. And there was a $40 application fee. So that's already a hefty start. And then it was 9 hours, 7 hours. What's that, 25 hours? So calculating in my wage just to work the market, not to make anything that sold, I think I was already like $1,500 in the hole, which meant that with my average profit margin of 45% is usually the profit that I make at a market, I needed to make $3,000 just to break even. And my goal was $4,000 for this market, and I ended with $2,607.50. So we actually ended up losing money, which Henry was trying to point out that, like, I'm losing money because I'm not able to pay myself, but that's the whole point of having a business, is to be able to pay myself. So I'll throw up the numbers up here of like all of the fees and everything I had to pay, like, you know, the booth fee, the application fee, my wage for the products, only the products that I sold, working the booth, all of that stuff. So I ended up profiting negative $312.94 at this market, which, not great. So luckily my upcoming market, assuming it does as well as it does in the past, I should be able to make like $3,000 or $4,000 and hopefully profit at that market. I do apologize for this lighting. Oh, the window is so bright, but if I close it, then it's gonna be too dark in here. So if you want a breakdown of like per day, on Saturday was the best day. Henry sold $1,026. On Sunday, I managed to sell $970.50. And then Monday, which they were telling us was going to be the best day of the 3 days and should like double in sales, was our worst day. And we only made $611. So $2,600 is a great market, but when you look at just the fact that I paid $988 for the booth fee, if you just forget about everything else, that is not a great turnaround. So I will split like by category of what all we sold. So of course my biggest category was crochet plushies. That's usually what I make the most money in. That was $2,179. So about 84% of my sales were the crochet plushies. I did not sell a crochet kit. I almost did. Somebody was looking at one. That's why I hesitated. I was like, wait, did I? I did not sell any resin eyes or stitch markers. For pottery, this is just pottery in total, I sold $370.50, which was about 14% of sales. And then my stickers, which can range anywhere from $2.50 or $3, depending on how many you buy, I sold $48, which was about 2% of my sales, bringing me to $2,607.50. So I'll kind of go over what all I sold of each thing. So hopefully I can remember to tell you how many I brought, how many sold, and the price. If not, I'll just fix it in editing. So pocket octopus, I brought 77, sold 18, and those are $12 each. And those I just put in a basket and people can dig through. They love them. They're usually a bestseller. Oh, I guess for my bestsellers, let's see here. I haven't actually looked at this yet. Alright, my bestsellers at this market were axolotls. Again, no surprise, I sold 18 of those. Pocket octopus, again, no surprise, I sold 18 of those. And then herb strippers, I believe I sold 12. So those are typically in my bestsellers. So along with the pocket octos being in a basket that people can just dig through, I also put pocket stingrays. I brought 24. Those are also $12, and I sold 6. My mini leggy frogs, I brought 11. They're $14, and I sold 7 of them, so they did pretty well. I changed up how I displayed them, so I bought those like collapsible crates that Joanne sells. And I'll throw a picture in if I can, if I happen to have one. But I feel like that definitely helped their sales. Chicks with frog hats, I sell those for $16. I sold 5 out of 5. They were sold out middle of day 2, but there was just too much to restock on day 3, so they only had the 5 to sell. Baby possums, I was selling them as quickly as I could restock them. So I ended up with 9, sold 9. Actually, I think I ended up with 11, sold 9. And then the 2 extra I took to one of my stores. But those are $16, and they are usually a bestseller, and they probably could have been up there in the #1 spot if I had more. But you know, you just never know what you need to keep stocking, and I had what I had. So mallard ducks, those are typically a bestseller of mine as well. Those are $18, and I sold 5 out of the 7 I brought. And then chickens, I have 2 different types of chickens, but my round chickens that are from the pattern pack with the mallard ducks, those are also $18, and I sold 3 of the 8 that I brought. And then I also have Mabel chickens, and they always go back and forth as to which one is the better seller at markets. My Mabel chickens are a little cheaper. They are 16 instead of the 18 that the round ones are. But I sold 7 of the 8 that I brought. So they almost sold out, but not quite. Baby axolotls. Those, I think I'm raising the price. So I sell those for $18, but I believe I'm going to raise them to $21. I don't think I started this market with the whole rainbow because I never got around to restocking it. You can go back and watch my week in my life, which was the week leading up to this market if you'd like, where I kind of go through a list of everything that I was wanting to make. I did not have time to get like anything on that list done. But with the ones I made at the market, I had 24 total and 18 sold. So I do have a bunch of green left. So I think green is the worst seller. I thought for sure it would be the yellow-orange combo, but apparently people don't like the green, which, understandable. Mushy boys, I had 2 different sizes. So I was trying out Kaylee's Naughty Ball Deluxe yarn and bought white and red, so I made mushy boys out of that. Those are $21, and they are bigger than my Bernay Blanket ones, which are $18. So the regular size, I sold 3 of the 4 at $18, and then I sold 1 of the 2 large, which I'm happy one is finally gone. Once that other large one is gone, I'm not making them in that size again. My cat plushies, those I sell for $18, and I have a variety of different color variations, but I was limited on the color variations I had at this market. So I brought 14. Most of those were orange tabby cats. But yeah, I had a lot of the like lesser selling colors. So I sold 6 of the 14, which is still a decent amount, but people clearly didn't want the ones that I had. And I do know at one point I was asked if I had any more black and white cats, which I did not. So I mentioned all of my plushies on my website are made to order if they wanted to go that route and I could ship it to them, but they ended up just picking one that I had. Now, this next one was disappointing because these are the items that I decided to focus on prepping for the market with the little time I had, and they didn't do too well. So my tofu turtles, I have them in 3 colors. I have a pink, a green, and a beige. And then I also have pizza turtles normally, but I didn't for this market, and I do have rainbow turtles as well. But for like the, just like plain colors, I have those 3 options. So I brought 16. I had 5 of each color, and then the green variant I had an extra of. But I only sold 4. And then I did bring some of my tofu variant. I brought 4. I have a bunch that I had set aside for my upcoming Pride market, but I had 4 at this market and I sold 3 of them, so not too bad. And then I did have a crab at this market. So this crab was my Brene blanket one, and I have decided moving forward I'm only making it in Parfait Chunky just because it's a lot cuter. But the crab was $18 and I sold the one I had. Dolphins are not doing too well for me. I thought they would. So this is also again I have multiple sizes of them. So this pattern pack of Sea Creatures by Crochet Grove, I started making most of them in Brene blanket because that's my typical yarn, and then I thought they were all too big and not as cute, so I made a bunch in Parfait Chunky. So a lot of these I have both sizes to compare. But my dolphins are $18 no matter which size it is, because in my formula the difference was negligible in terms of like yarn cost, and it took me about the same amount of time, so that part of the formula was the same. So they're both $18, and I had 4 in Brene blanket and I had 5 in Parfait Chunky. I sold 1 dolphin total, and that was my 1 pink Parfait Chunky one as a pink river dolphin. So Henry sold that on Saturday, so I'm not sure if they liked that it was a pink river dolphin, they just liked that it was pink, I don't know. Similarly, in that pattern pack, I also brought some sea stars. I sold 0 of them, but those are $18. Similarly, I also have some seahorses. The Parfait Chunky ones sell really well, but at this market I only had the Brene blanket ones, and I sold 0 out of the 2 I brought. Another 0 sale I had was one of my patterns is a chocolate kiss, and I've had these for a little bit, so I brought them to the market. I sell them for $18. I had 7. I sold 0. So not a lot of sales in those couple of categories. But my booty turtles, I tested a different setup this time. So at my previous market, people kept dropping them we were on a road, so it was a very dirty asphalt, and I've learned that Parfait Chunky doesn't clean up too well and doesn't like getting wet. So I have one that it's like forehead is dirty, and I tried my best to clean it, but I can't seem to get it. But every time I try to display these at markets, I try to have one with the shell off so people can see they have the booties, and people either say that it's naked, or most of the time they put the shell back on it, even when I tell them, oh, please don't do that, like I purposely have it displayed like that. But putting them in the like foldable crate that I also had the leggy frogs in was fantastic. They didn't fall, which was great, especially because it was raining most of the market and the ground was wet. So I had 3 total. I sold 2. And I believe the one I have left is the one with the forehead that's messed up. But luckily, I have a crap ton of bodies in my whips pile that I'm just waiting to be able to restock some yarn to make the shells. And somehow, even though like 2 days ago I got an email that Acorn was restocked in Parfait Chunky, it's sold out already. So I'll probably just switch one of these guys out for the one I have in my bucket, and then it'll have a shell. But those I sell for $24. And then the jellies I mentioned earlier, I believe I had 6. Any of the plushies that I was restocking, I kind of was just going quickly and didn't write down whenever I put one out. So I kind of went off of my inventory. But I sold 4 in total, and 3 of those were on Saturday with Henry, so I guess he only had 3 to bring to the market. And then the 4th one sold within 5 minutes of me putting one that I had just made out on the shelf. That was also in the Crochet Grove Sea Creature bundle, and like all of my other videos, I will have the patterns all linked in the description. But that turtle in that pattern pack, I also sold finally the Parfait Chunky version of it. I had a Bernay blanket, and that one sold first. I think that's the only one of that pattern pack that the Bernay blanket sold before the Parfait Chunky. But yeah, I sold 1 out of 1 for $24. And now we're on to my like medium / larger plushies. So I have these flower turtles that usually I'll make like 10 sunflower turtles, and that'll last me for a little bit, and I'll bring like 2 to each market. Well, I think I sent Henry with 2 on day 1. He sold them both. I saw that, meant to bring more on day 2. Forgot. And then brought more on day 3, and I think I brought 4 that time, and of course sold them all. Like, I forget what the numbers are. But I sold the 1 out of 1 daisy turtle. That was $38. I sold 5 sunflower turtles at $38 each. I think that was all of the sunflower turtles I brought. I believe I sold out of what I had at the market, but I had some here. I did not sell my cow. That one is $55, but that's okay. Squids, they sold really well. So I had 3 baby squids and sold all 3 at $28 each, and then I had 1 big squid for $48 that also sold. Which, a sale is a sale. I have to remind myself that. But most of the squids I had made specifically for the Pride Market, and they were intended for that. So, gotta restock those. I did not sell any whales, which most of them are intended for Pride and are like subtle Pride flags. So hopefully they should sell there. My dragons, I had 2 total. I did not sell my Bernay blanket one. That's like a monochrome blue is what I have at the moment. That one's $58. But I did sell my Parfait Chunky one, which was $52. I also sold my big Brontosaurus, which Henry sold actually, so I did not see that sale. My Scrappy Bears, I will link that video up here as well if you want to go see it. I went through a bunch of scrap yarn on my shelves and spun a wheel, and it told me what skein to grab next, so never would have paired these colors together, but Henry actually sold one of them for $52. Apparently Saturday was the day for the big plushies, which was a real shame that I wasn't there. And that's it for the big plushies. And then I mentioned earlier we did not sell any crochet kits, stitch markers, or resin eyes. We did sell a handful of stickers, so I'll quickly go over those real quick. We sold 2 bisexual frogs, scratch that, 4 bisexual frogs, 1 gay frog, 1 non-binary, 1 progress, and 1 transgender. Sorry, 2 transgender. I sold 1 biceratops, 1 panda, 3 mess with the bunny, get the horn jackalope sticker. So that's exciting. Those don't typically sell too well. I think, yeah, that's one of 2 designs I have that's not a pride pun. And then 2 non-binosaur stickers, 1 stegosaurus, and then 2 Triceratops stickers, 1 blue, 1 pink. Now we have our herb strippers. So I'm just going to quickly name them real quick. I have a bunch of different colors. I feel like people tend to like the blue, but I sold 1 amaryllis, 2 lime shower, 2 Norse blue, which was a new glaze I tried out for herb strippers, 1 purple crystal, which also was a new test out for me in terms of herb strippers, a raspberry mist, 4 robin's eggs, and 1 tea dust. So robin's egg, I clearly need to make more of. I had 6 robin egg herb strippers and sold 4 of them. So almost out of robin's egg. And then I did sell 4 mugs at this market. Most of them were my Pride cups. So it's a good thing Henry told me I should make those listings for them for this last market rather than saving them all for Pride. So I sold a $21 rainbow cup, $26 rainbow mug, a $27 robin's egg mug, and then a $27.50 Aurora green like drippy mug. I sold a $15 citrus juicer, and then I did sell a couple of bowls. I sold one for $10, one for $18, one for $22. Those I kind of eyeball the size of the bowl up, and I'm still trying to figure out how to price pottery. And then I sold 2 spoon rests for $12 each. So that is everything I sold at this market. I do wish I would have sold more. I think I would have if the weather was in my favor, which is unfortunate because you can't control the weather. But I'm still kind of debating whether or not I want to do this market next year. There is another market called Territory Days in Colorado Springs that I might check out and try to do, but I also know I think that one got a lot of wait lists. They're both roughly the same distance from where I live currently. I'm sure a lot of small business owners feel this way too, but I just wish there was like a looking glass or like a crystal ball where I could just know how a market's gonna do and know whether or not to sign up for it. But alas, that is not life. So, you know, my luck just ran out. These past couple of markets I've had really great sales at, much higher than my expectation. So maybe I just have too high of expectations for a multi-day market. Maybe not. It could have just been the weather. I'm sure I would have done better if it was sunny and not raining. But, you know, it's a spring market. You're rolling the dice for it. But now it's time to look ahead. So I do have an exciting market coming up. I've done this Pride market for the past 2 years and done really well there. Last year I essentially sold out. I only had a handful of plushies left and then a bunch of pottery. But I'm hoping this year pottery does well because I have the herb strippers, which I have slowly learned that people really like and started making more of. And I made some Pride flag mugs this year. You can go check out my May kiln unloading video. Towards the end is where I get to the Pride mugs. They did not turn out how I had envisioned originally, but I'm still very happy with how they turned out after I had a minute to kind of, you know, process them. But I think that's everything I have for this market. You know, it's what it is. So let me know down below if you would do this market again next year. Is it just the weather that kept me down? Ideally, I would have made another $1,400 to reach my goal. So is paying $988, just say I made my goal, is paying $988 worth $4,000 of sales? I don't think it's worth the $2,600 that I did get, but also it's not a guarantee that I'll make more next year, and also it could rain again. So let me know what you would do if you are in my boat. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. And anyways, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!